I discovered my wife lent my car to her lover while I was sick with pneumonia, so I filed a theft report and she got arrested. But that was just the beginning of my revenge plan. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The fever had broken sometime during the night, leaving me drenched in sweat and shivering under 3 blankets. Pneumonia at 58 isn't something you mess around with, you know, and my doctor had been crystal clear about staying in bed for at least another week. I reached for the water glass on my nightstand, my hands still trembling from the antibiotics coursing through my system. The whole room felt like it was spinning slightly, that dizzy feeling you get when your body's been fighting infection for days on end. That's when I heard the front door slam. Sarah's heels clicked across our hardwood floors in that quick, nervous rhythm I'd learned to recognize over 22 years of marriage. The sound meant she was either excited about something or hiding something. Given that she'd barely spoken to me in 3 days beyond asking if I needed soup or more tissues, I figured it wasn't excitement. "How are you feeling, honey?" she called from downstairs, her voice carrying that artificial sweetness she used when she wanted something. "You know that tone, right? The one that sounds caring but feels hollow somehow?" "Better," I croaked back, though my chest still felt like someone had filled it with concrete. "Where did you go? I thought you were working from home today." There was a pause. Long enough that I started paying attention. In 22 years of marriage, you learn to read the silences as much as the words. This wasn't her usual pause while she thought about what to say. This was the pause of someone scrambling for a lie. "Just ran some errands. Got your prescription refilled." Her footsteps moved toward the kitchen, away from the stairs, away from having to look me in the eye. I sat up slowly, fighting off a wave of dizziness that made the room tilt sideways. Through our bedroom window, I could see our driveway perfectly. It was one of the things we'd loved about this house when we bought it 15 years ago, the clear view of the street from the master bedroom. Sarah's white Honda was there, engine still ticking as it cooled down. But something was wrong with the picture. My 2019 Silverado was gone. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe she took it to get it serviced, right? Maybe there was some perfectly innocent explanation. But you see, Sarah hated driving my truck. Always complained it was too big, too hard to park, made her feel like she was driving a boat. In 5 years of owning that vehicle, she'd driven it exactly 3 times, and only because her car was in the shop and she had no other choice. She'd complained about it each time, saying it hurt her back and made her nervous in parking lots. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, my thumb hovering over her contact. Something told me not to call. Something told me to wait and watch. Maybe it was the accountant in me. I'd built my practice by being patient, by gathering all the facts before making any decisions. Or maybe it was just instinct. Either way, I decided to observe before I acted. The coughing fit that followed left me exhausted and gasping. This pneumonia had knocked me flat for over a week now. I'd gone from running 3 miles every morning to barely being able to walk to the bathroom without getting winded. Dr. Peterson had warned me it would be a slow recovery, especially at my age. "Your body's working overtime to fight this infection, Frank," he'd said. "Rest is the only cure. Rest." While my wife was apparently running mysterious errands with my truck. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, Sarah was standing in our bedroom doorway with a steaming bowl in her hands. The afternoon light had shifted, casting long shadows across our hardwood floors. "I made you some chicken soup," she said, setting the bowl on my nightstand. "The kind from the deli you like." I studied her face as she fussed with the pillows behind my head. 22 years of marriage, and I thought I could read every expression. But this one was new. There was something almost guilty in the way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes, the way her hands fidgeted with her wedding ring. "Thank you," I managed, my voice still rough from coughing. "How was your day?" "Oh, you know. Busy." She smoothed the comforter over my legs with unnecessary attention. "Boring office stuff. Conference calls about the Henderson account." Sarah worked in marketing for a mid-sized insurance company downtown. 23 years with the same firm, steady promotions, good benefits. She usually loved talking about her work, especially when she was frustrated with clients or excited about new campaigns. Today, she gave me nothing. The Henderson account? I thought that wrapped up last month. Her hands stilled on the blanket. Did I say Henderson? I meant the Morrison account. You know how these client names all sound the same after a while. But I didn't know that about Sarah. She had an excellent memory for details, always had. It was one of the things I'd admired about her when we first met. She could remember conversations from months ago, recall exactly what someone had worn to a party, quote movie dialogue word for word. Sarah didn't mix up client names. "Where's my truck?" I asked casually, spooning some of the soup. It was good soup, but it tasted like cardboard in my mouth. "Your truck." She finally looked at me directly, and I saw something flicker across her face. Fear. Annoyance. "It's in the shop. Remember? You said it was making that noise." I set down the spoon carefully. "I never said anything about any noise, Sarah." "Sure you did. Last week, before you got sick. You said it was making a grinding sound when you braked." Her voice was getting higher, the way it did when she was stressed. "I dropped it off at Patterson's this morning. They said it might be the brake pads." Patterson's Auto. I'd been taking my vehicles there for 10 years. Tom Patterson was a straight shooter, never tried to sell you services you didn't need. If my truck was really there, he would have called me directly. Tom knew I was particular about my vehicles, knew I liked to approve any work before it got done. "That was thoughtful of you," I said. "Did Tom say when it would be ready?" Tom Patterson. The owner. Guy who's worked on our cars for a decade. Sarah's face went blank for just a moment. "Oh, right. Tom. He said maybe by Friday. Depends on if they have the parts in stock." I nodded and went back to eating my soup, but my mind was racing. Sarah had just lied to me. Multiple lies, actually. About the Henderson account that was supposedly Morrison. About my truck making noise. About dropping it at Patterson's. And the way she'd forgotten Tom's name. Sarah had met Tom dozens of times over the years. She'd even brought him Christmas cookies last December. After she left the room, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I'd just witnessed. My wife of 22 years, the woman I'd built a life with, the woman I trusted more than anyone in the world, had just looked me in the eye while I was sick and lied to me repeatedly. The next morning, I felt strong enough to make it downstairs. Sarah was already gone, left early for work, according to the note she'd scribbled on the kitchen counter. "Feel better, honey. Call if you need anything. Love, S." The handwriting was hurried, careless. Not like her usual careful script. But my truck was back in the driveway, parked at a slightly different angle than I always left it. I was obsessive about parking, a habit left over from my military days. I always backed into the driveway, always positioned the truck so it was perfectly centered between the landscaping lights. This truck was pulled in forward and parked about 2 feet too far to the left. I pulled on my bathrobe and walked outside, the October air sharp in my lungs. Each breath felt like ice, but it was good to be upright and moving. The driver's seat was adjusted wrong. Way too far forward. Sarah was 5 feet 4 inches to my 6 feet 2 inches, so that made sense if she'd been driving. But when I opened the glove compartment to check if anything was missing, I found something that definitely didn't belong to either of us. A woman's earring. Silver, with a little blue stone. Definitely not Sarah's style. She preferred gold jewelry, always had. Classic, understated pieces that went with her business wardrobe. This earring was younger, trendier. The kind of thing a woman in her 30s might wear. My hands started shaking, and it wasn't from the pneumonia anymore. I sat in that driver's seat for a long time, turning that earring over in my palm. 22 years of marriage, and I thought I knew my wife. We'd had our rough patches, sure. What couple doesn't? The first few years when we were both finding our careers, struggling with money. The fertility issues that had lasted for 5 heartbreaking years before we'd finally accepted we wouldn't have children. The period about 10 years ago when Sarah had gone through what she called her midlife crisis, questioning everything about our life together. But we'd worked through all of that. Or at least, I thought we had. We'd gone to counseling, taken romantic vacations, made efforts to reconnect. For the past few years, things had seemed stable. Not passionate like when we were young, but comfortable. Solid. This felt different. This felt like betrayal. The smart thing would have been to confront her directly. Ask her about the earring, about why she'd taken my truck, about all the lies she'd told me while I was sick in bed. But something in my gut told me there was more to discover. And honestly, I wasn't sure I was ready for whatever truth was waiting for me. So instead, I did something I'd never done before in our marriage. I started investigating my own wife. First thing I did was check our joint credit card statements online. I pulled up 3 months' worth of transactions, looking for anything unusual. At first glance, everything looked normal. Groceries at Safeway, gas at the Shell station near Sarah's office, her monthly hair appointment at that salon she'd been going to for years. Normal married couple expenses. But then I remembered something. Sarah had gotten a new credit card last month. Better rewards program, she'd said, waving the shiny new plastic in the air. We'll earn points toward airline tickets. A card that didn't show up on our joint account because it was in her name only. It took some digging, but I found the paperwork in her desk drawer downstairs. A MasterCard with just her name on it. The monthly statement was folded neatly inside the original envelope, which struck me as odd. Sarah usually threw credit card statements in our file folder without opening them. Let me handle the finances. Why was she keeping this one separate? When I unfolded that statement, my chest tightened with something worse than pneumonia. Romano's Italian restaurant, $127.43 on September 15th. That was our anniversary restaurant. The place where I'd proposed 23 years ago. The place where we celebrated every major milestone in our relationship. But September 15th wasn't our anniversary. That was in June. And I'd been in Cleveland that week for a client meeting. Hotel Deluxe downtown, $289 for one night on September 22nd. I'd been home that night, remember exactly what we'd had for dinner because I'd cooked it myself. Salmon with that lemon sauce Sarah liked. We'd watched a movie afterward, some romantic comedy she'd picked out. But according to the statement, she'd spent nearly $300 on a hotel room in the city where we lived. Victoria's Secret, $247.18 on October 3rd. 3 days before I'd gotten sick. Sarah hadn't bought lingerie in 3 years, not since she'd gone through that phase where she said it was uncomfortable and impractical. I tried not to take it personally when she'd switched to cotton underwear and sports bras, told myself it was just part of getting older. The gas purchases were what really caught my attention though. Chevron Station on Burnside, October 8th. Shell Station on Division, October 10th. These weren't gas stations near her office or our house. They were clear across town, in neighborhoods Sarah had no reason to visit. I sat in her desk chair, staring at that credit card statement, feeling like the floor was dropping out from under me. Each charge was a lie. Each transaction was evidence of a life she was living without me. A life she was hiding from me. My hands were shaking again as I reached for my phone. I called the credit card company's customer service number, my heart pounding as I waited for someone to answer. MasterCard customer service, this is Jennifer. How can I help you today? Hi. This is Frank Morrison. I'm calling about fraudulent charges on my wife's account. The lie came easier than I'd expected. Someone's been using her card without permission. I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Morrison. Can you provide me with the account number? I read off the numbers from Sarah's card, answered a few security questions using information I knew about my wife. Date of birth, mother's maiden name, social security number. 22 years of marriage had given me access to all of her personal details. Okay, I have the account pulled up. Which charges are you questioning? All of the restaurant charges from the past 2 months. And the hotel charges. My wife's been out of town on business, but these don't match her expense reports. Jennifer went through the list methodically. Romano's Italian, September 15th and October 5th. Hotel Deluxe, September 22nd and October 12th. Even a charge at a wine bar I'd never heard of, $89 on a Tuesday afternoon when Sarah had told me she was in back-to-back meetings. Those are quite a few charges, sir. Would you like me to start a fraud investigation? Not yet, I said quickly. Let me double-check with my wife first. Maybe I misunderstood her travel schedule. But I hadn't misunderstood anything. Sarah wasn't traveling for business. She was living a double life, and she was using credit to fund it. After I hung up the phone, I sat in her desk chair for a long time, just thinking. 22 years of marriage. 22 years of building a life together, sharing everything, trusting each other completely. And now I was sitting in my wife's desk, going through her financial records like a detective investigating a suspect. The worst part wasn't even the evidence of an affair, though that was devastating enough. The worst part was how calculated it all seemed. The separate credit card. The lies about client names and brake repairs. The way she'd been caring for me while I was sick, bringing me soup and asking about my symptoms, all while using my own vehicle to meet another man. That's when I remembered something. My truck had GPS tracking through the OnStar system. I'd set it up for theft protection a few years back after a rash of car break-ins in our neighborhood, but I'd never actually used it. The monthly fee was only $10, and it seemed like good insurance. It took me 20 minutes to navigate their website and access the tracking history. I had to answer more security questions, provide my VIN number, verify my identity through 3 different methods. But finally, I was looking at a detailed map showing everywhere my truck had been for the past month. What I found made my stomach drop to my knees. For the past 3 weeks, while I'd been sick, my truck had been making regular trips to an apartment complex across town. The Willows at Creekside. I knew the place, expensive development, the kind where young professionals lived. Modern units with granite countertops and hardwood floors, the kind of place that charged $3,000 a month for a 1-bedroom. I grabbed a notepad and started documenting everything. Times, dates, locations. Every lie Sarah had told me, cross-referenced with where my truck had actually been. The pattern was crystal clear and absolutely devastating. Tuesday, October 8th. Sarah told me she was working late, had a client dinner. My truck was parked at the Willows from 6:30 p.m. to 11:45 p.m. Thursday, October 10th. Sarah said she had a dentist appointment, then drinks with her co-worker Janet. Truck was at the Willows from 2 p.m. to 4:30 p.m., then again from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Saturday, October 12th. Sarah claimed she was shopping with her sister Linda, then having dinner at that new Thai place. Truck spent the entire afternoon and evening at the Willows, from 1 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. And yesterday, while she'd supposedly been running errands and picking up my prescription, the GPS showed a 2-hour stop at the Willows between 10 a.m. and noon. I stared at the data for a long time, feeling something cold and hard settling in my chest. This wasn't just an affair. This was a relationship. Regular visits, extended time periods, a pattern that had been going on for weeks, maybe months. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was living with someone else part-time, using my truck to do it, and lying to my face about every aspect of her life. I picked up my phone and called Sarah's sister Linda. Frank. Linda's voice was warm and surprised. How are you feeling? Sarah said you've been really sick with pneumonia. That's scary at your age. Much better, thanks for asking. Hey, Linda, I was wondering about last Saturday. Sarah mentioned you two went shopping and then tried that new Thai place on Division. How was the food? There was a pause. A long, uncomfortable pause that told me everything I needed to know. Shopping? Frank, I wasn't with Sarah on Saturday. I was actually in Seattle visiting Mom. Have been there all week, helping her get ready for her move to the assisted living place. The phone felt heavy in my hand. Oh, I managed. Must have misunderstood. She probably went with someone else. Yeah, probably Janet from her work. They go shopping together sometimes. Linda's voice was careful now, like she sensed there was more to this conversation than she understood. Is everything okay, Frank? Everything's fine. Just got my days mixed up. You know how it is when you're sick. Time sort of blurs together. After I hung up, I sat in our living room for about an hour, just thinking. The lying was bad enough. The affair was devastating. But using my vehicle, my truck that I'd worked overtime to afford, that I'd saved for and researched and been so proud to finally buy, to meet her lover while I was sick in bed? That crossed a line I didn't even know existed. But I needed more information before I acted. 22 years of marriage had taught me that Sarah was smart and careful. If I was going to confront her about this, I needed to have all my facts straight. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. I spent the next 2 hours on the internet, using the address of the Willows to narrow down my search. Property management websites, rental listings, social media posts. It's amazing what you can find when you know where to look and you have time to dig. The Willows had 240 units spread across 6 buildings. Mostly 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, expensive but not luxury level. The kind of place where young professionals lived while they saved money to buy houses. The demographic was largely people in their late 20s to early 40s, single or newly married couples just starting out. I found the property management company's website and called their leasing office, pretending to be interested in renting. The Willows, this is Ashley. How can I help you today? Hi, I'm interested in possibly renting a unit. Can you tell me about availability and pricing? Ashley was enthusiastic and helpful, walking me through floor plans and amenities. But what I really wanted to know was about current residents. What's the community like? I'm in my 50s, wondering if I'd fit in with the other residents. Oh, we have residents of all ages. Though I'd say the majority are probably in their 30s and 40s. Young professionals, a lot of people who work downtown. Very quiet community, very respectful. That's good to hear. I drive a big pickup truck. Will that be a problem in the parking areas? Not at all. We have plenty of parking. Actually, one of our residents drives a big silver pickup truck, no problems at all. My mouth went dry. Silver pickup? Like a Chevy Silverado. I think so, yeah. Nice truck. I always notice it because it's so clean and well maintained. I thanked Ashley and hung up, my hands shaking. So my truck had been seen at the Willows often enough that the leasing agent recognized it. This wasn't occasional visits. This was regular enough to be noticed and remembered. That afternoon, I drove myself to the Willows. First time I'd been behind the wheel since getting sick, and it felt good to be mobile again, even though I was still weak and dizzy. The complex was exactly what I'd expected. Modern, well-maintained, expensive-looking. 6 buildings arranged around a central courtyard with a pool and fitness center. I parked across the street and waited. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to see, but I needed to put eyes on this place. I needed to make this real in my mind, not just GPS coordinates and credit card charges. At 4:30, I saw Sarah's white Honda turn into the complex. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched my wife of 22 years park in visitors' parking and walk toward Building C. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something red and form-fitting that she definitely hadn't been wearing when she'd left for work that morning. Her hair was down and curled, and she was walking with a spring in her step I hadn't seen in years. 20 minutes later, she emerged from Building C with a man I'd never seen before. He was younger than me, probably early 40s, with dark hair and an athletic build. Wearing a nice suit, the kind that cost more than I usually spent on clothes. They were laughing about something, and when he put his hand on the small of her back to guide her toward her car, the gesture was casual and familiar. The gesture of a man who'd done that many times before. I watched them drive away in Sarah's Honda, and then I sat in my car for another hour, just staring at Building C. Apartment 247, according to the directory by the mailboxes. Derek Martinez. That night, Sarah came home at her usual time, around 6:30 p.m. She was back in her normal work clothes, conservative blouse, dress pants, low heels. Hair pulled back in the neat bun she always wore to the office. "How was your day?" she asked, settling onto the couch beside me. I was watching the news, or pretending to watch it. Really, I was studying her face, looking for signs of guilt or deception. Boring. Slept most of the afternoon. Still feeling pretty weak. I muted the television. "How about you?" "Busy day at the office. The usual. Conference calls, paperwork. Nothing exciting." She was scrolling through her phone as she talked, not really paying attention to the conversation. "I picked up groceries on the way home. Made that pasta salad you like for dinner." "That's sweet of you. What time did you leave work?" Her thumb paused on her phone screen. "The usual time." "Why?" "Just wondering. You seem more energetic than usual." "Good day, I guess." Sarah looked at me directly for the first time since she'd walked in the door. "I suppose." "Frank, are you feeling okay? You're acting strange." "Strange how?" "I don't know." Questions about my day, paying attention to what time I left work. "That's not like you." She set down her phone and turned to face me fully. "Are you worried about something?" This was my chance. The perfect opening to confront her about the lies, about the affair, about the credit card charges and the GPS tracking and the man I'd seen her with at the Willows. But something held me back. Maybe it was cowardice, or maybe it was strategy. But I decided I needed more information before I played my hand. Just feeling disconnected, I guess. Being stuck in bed for over a week, you start to wonder what everyone else is doing with their lives. Sarah's expression softened. She reached over and put her hand on my forehead, checking for fever like she'd done when I was at my sickest. "You're still warm," she said gently. "This pneumonia really knocked you down. But you're getting better every day. Soon you'll be back to your old self and complaining that I don't tell you enough about my boring workday." The tenderness in her voice almost broke my heart. This was the woman I'd married, the woman who'd taken care of me through food poisoning and the flu and a broken ankle from that skiing accident 5 years ago. The woman who'd held me while I cried after my father died, who'd supported me through the stress of starting my own accounting practice. But it was also the woman who'd been lying to me for weeks, who'd been using my truck to visit her lover, who'd been living a double life while bringing me soup and checking my temperature. The next few days passed in a strange haze. I was getting stronger physically, able to stay awake for longer periods and move around the house without getting completely winded. But emotionally, I felt like I was dying inside. Sarah continued her routine of distant politeness, bringing me meals and asking about my symptoms while avoiding any real conversation. She left early and came home late, always with perfectly reasonable explanations. Client dinner with the Henderson account. Emergency meeting about the Morrison campaign. Drinks with Janet from accounting to celebrate her promotion. But her phone was constantly buzzing with text messages she'd read in the bathroom with the door locked. And twice, I heard her having quiet phone conversations in the garage, conversations that ended abruptly when she heard me moving around upstairs. I used those days to gather more evidence. I called Sarah's office, pretending to be a vendor trying to schedule a meeting, and learned that she'd been leaving work at 3 p.m. most days for the past month. Extended lunch breaks, her assistant explained. Mrs. Morrison has been dealing with some personal matters. Personal matters. That was one way to put it. I also did more research on Derek Martinez. Social media made it easy. His profiles were public, probably because he worked in sales and used LinkedIn for business development. Derek Martinez, 34 years old, senior account manager at Pacific Insurance. Divorced 2 years ago, no children. Lived at the Willows at Creekside, apartment 247. His Facebook photos showed a man who took care of himself. Gym selfies, vacation photos from expensive resorts, pictures of his red Camaro at various car shows and racing events. The kind of man who spent money on his appearance and his hobbies, who lived for the moment rather than saving for the future. The opposite of me, in other words. But the most interesting thing I discovered was in the comments on one of Derek's recent posts. He'd shared a photo of his Camaro at a car show, and someone had commented, "Sweet ride. When you getting it back from the shop?" Derek's response was dated 3 weeks ago, "Hopefully soon. Transmission went out completely. Been borrowing a friend's truck while Patterson's works on it." Patterson's Auto. The same shop where Sarah had supposedly taken my truck for brake work. Everything clicked into place. Derek's car had been in the shop for transmission work, expensive, time-consuming work that could take weeks. So Sarah had been letting him borrow my truck while his car was being repaired. My truck had become their vehicle for continuing their affair. On Friday, exactly 2 weeks after I'd first found the earring, Sarah announced she was going out with her sister Linda for a movie and dinner. "You should rest," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I might be out pretty late. You know how Linda likes to talk after a few glasses of wine." I nodded and told her to have fun, my voice calm despite the rage building in my chest. "Tell Linda I said hello. And thank her for the flowers she sent when I was sick." Sarah paused in the doorway. "Flowers. The beautiful arrangement that arrived last week. Yellow roses and lilies." The card said, "Get well soon, love Linda." Of course, no flowers had arrived from Linda. I was testing Sarah, seeing if she'd been paying any attention to what was happening in our house while she was busy with her affair. Oh, right. The flowers. Yes, they were beautiful. Sarah's voice was vague, distracted. "I'll tell her you appreciated them." Another lie. If Linda had really sent flowers, Sarah would have seen them, would have mentioned them, probably would have moved them to a better location or complained about the arrangement. The fact that she played along with my fiction told me everything I needed to know about how much attention she was paying to her sick husband. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I called Linda. "Oh, hi Frank." Linda's voice was surprised. "How are you feeling? Sarah said the pneumonia was really knocking you around." "Much better, thanks. Hey, what movie are you two seeing tonight? I might catch it myself when I'm feeling up to it." There was a pause. A long, uncomfortable pause that I'd been expecting. "Movie? Frank, I'm not seeing Sarah tonight. I'm actually still in Seattle with Mom. We're not flying back until Monday." My chest tightened, but not with surprise. With confirmation. "Oh," I managed. "Must have misunderstood. She's probably going with someone else. Probably Janet from work. They do movie nights sometimes." Linda's voice was careful. "Frank, is everything okay? You sound, I don't know, stressed. Just tired. This recovery is taking longer than I expected." After I hung up, I sat in my living room for exactly 1 hour, just thinking, planning. 22 years of marriage, and it had come to this. My wife was meeting her lover while telling me she was with her sister. She was using my truck to facilitate their affair while I was sick in bed with pneumonia. And she was doing it all while playing the caring wife, bringing me soup and asking about my symptoms. The lying was devastating. The affair was heartbreaking. But the calculated cruelty of it all, that was what pushed me over the edge. I pulled up the OnStar website and tracked my truck's location. Just as I'd expected, it was parked at the Willows. That's when I made the call that changed everything. "Portland Police Non-Emergency Line, this is Officer Williams. How can I help you?" "I'd like to report a stolen vehicle," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Officer Williams took down all the details. My truck's make, model, license plate number, VIN. The fact that it had been taken without my permission while I was bedridden with pneumonia. The current location according to GPS tracking. "And you're sure you didn't give permission for anyone else to drive this vehicle, Mr. Morrison?" "I'm absolutely sure. I've been sick with pneumonia for 2 weeks. The vehicle was taken without my knowledge or consent." "Are you sure you want to file this report, sir? If this is a family dispute, you might want to consider other options first. Once we file a theft report, it becomes a criminal matter. Officer, I said quietly, my truck is being used by someone who doesn't have my permission to drive it. That's theft, isn't it? Yes, sir, it is. We'll send a unit to investigate the reported theft immediately. I hung up and immediately called Sarah's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Then I poured myself a whiskey, the first alcohol I'd had in 2 weeks, and sat back in my recliner to wait. The call came at 9:47 p.m. Frank. Sarah's voice was hysterical, high-pitched and desperate. Frank, you have to help me. The police arrested me. They're saying I stole your truck. This is insane. I let the silence stretch out for a few seconds before responding, taking a slow sip of my whiskey. Did you have my permission to take it? What? Frank, don't be ridiculous. We're married. It's not stealing when. Did you have my permission? I repeated, my voice ice cold. Another pause. I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the line, could hear voices in the background. She was calling from the police station. You were sick, she said finally, her voice smaller now. I didn't want to bother you with. Where were you tonight, Sarah? I told you, I was. With Linda? Because I called Linda. She's in Seattle visiting your mother. So I'll ask you again, where were you tonight? The silence that followed lasted so long, I thought she'd hung up. Frank, she whispered finally. We need to talk. Yes, I agreed, finishing my whiskey. We do. But first, you need to figure out how you're getting home from jail. Because I'm not coming to get you. I hung up the phone and poured myself another drink. You know what's funny about betrayal? It doesn't happen all at once. It's a series of small choices, little lies that build up over time until suddenly you're living with a stranger. Someone who can look you in the eye while you're sick and lie about where they're going, who they're seeing, what they're doing with your own possessions. But revenge. Revenge can be swift and surgical when you know exactly what you're doing. Sarah spent the night in Multnomah County Jail. Got released on her own recognizance the next morning, probably after calling Derek to come get her. She came home around noon, looking like she'd aged 5 years overnight. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, her clothes wrinkled from sleeping in a holding cell. I was waiting for her in the living room, fully dressed for the first time in 2 weeks. The divorce papers were already printed and sitting on the coffee table next to a manila folder thick with evidence. Frank, please, let me explain. His name's Derek Martinez, I interrupted calmly. Derek Martinez, apartment 247 at the Willows at Creekside. He's 34 years old, works at Pacific Insurance downtown as a senior account manager. Drives a red Camaro that's been in the shop at Patterson's Auto for the past month getting transmission work done, which is why my wife has been letting him borrow my truck. Sarah's face went completely white. She grabbed the back of the couch for support, her legs suddenly unsteady. How did you find out? It's amazing what you can discover when you actually start paying attention. Like the fact that you opened a credit card I didn't know about. Or that you've been charging hotels and dinners for 2. Or that Derek's car has been at Patterson's Auto Repair for 3 weeks getting transmission work done, and you've been playing chauffeur with my truck while I was dying of pneumonia. I opened the manila folder and spread the contents across our coffee table like I was presenting evidence to a jury. Credit card statements, GPS tracking reports, photographs I'd taken of Derek's apartment building, printouts of his social media profiles. Romano's Italian Restaurant, September 15th, $127. That's our anniversary restaurant, Sarah. The place where I proposed. Except our anniversary is in June, and I was in Cleveland that week on business. Sarah sank into the chair across from me, her face getting paler with each piece of evidence I presented. Hotel Deluxe, September 22nd, $289. I remember that night perfectly because I cooked dinner for us. Salmon with lemon sauce, your favorite. We watched that romantic comedy you picked out, That Julia Roberts movie you'd been wanting to see. But according to your credit card, you spent nearly $300 on a hotel room that same night. Her hands were shaking now, gripping the arms of the chair like she was trying not to fall. Victoria's Secret, October 3rd, $247. 3 days before I got sick. You hadn't bought lingerie in 3 years, Sarah. 3 years. But suddenly, right before starting this affair, you needed new underwear. Frank, please. I'm not done. I pulled out the GPS tracking reports, pages and pages of detailed location data. October 8th, you told me you were working late, had a client dinner. My truck was at the Willows from 6:30 to 11:45 p.m. October 10th, dentist appointment and drinks with Janet. Truck was there from 2 to 4:30, then again from 7 to 10. October 12th, shopping with Linda and dinner at that Thai place. Truck spent 9 hours at Derek's apartment. Sarah's eyes were filled with tears now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her. Just a cold, clinical satisfaction at laying out the facts. And yesterday, while you were supposedly getting my prescription and running errands, you spent 2 hours at his place. 2 hours of quality time with your boyfriend while your husband was homesick, trusting you completely. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she whispered. It just started innocently. Innocently. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You opened a secret credit card to fund your affair. You lied to me dozens of times over months. You stole my truck while I was bedridden with a potentially life-threatening illness. What exactly was innocent about any of that? I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a photo I'd taken at the Willows. Sarah walking out of Derek's building in that red dress, his hand on her back, both of them laughing. This was taken on Tuesday, while you were supposedly in meetings about the Henderson account that doesn't exist. You look happy, Sarah. Happier than I've seen you in years. She stared at the photo for a long time, tears streaming down her face. Frank, I'm sorry, You're sorry you got caught, I corrected her. There's a difference. I slid the divorce papers across the coffee table. I'm filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. I have documentation of your affair, including credit card records, GPS tracking data, photographic evidence, and now a police report for vehicle theft. My lawyer says it's pretty much ironclad. Sarah picked up the papers with trembling hands, her tears dripping onto the legal documents. Frank, please, we can work through this. I'll end it with Derek. We can go to counseling. Sarah. I waited until she looked at me. You stole my truck to meet your lover while I had pneumonia. While I couldn't even get out of bed to get my own water. What exactly do you think we're going to work through? But we've been married for 22 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It meant everything to me, I said quietly. Right up until I found that earring in my truck. Sarah's head snapped up. What earring? I pulled a small plastic bag from the folder, the kind police use for evidence. Inside was the silver earring with the blue stone that I'd found that first morning. This earring. The one that fell out of your boyfriend's ear when you were giving him rides in my truck. Her face went completely white. That's not what you think. It's not yours, Sarah. I know your jewelry better than you do after 22 years. And it sure as hell isn't mine. So whose is it? The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Finally, Sarah's shoulders sagged in defeat. Her name is Jessica, she whispered. I blinked. Her. Derek's girlfriend. His other girlfriend. Sarah's voice was barely audible. I'm not the only one, Frank. Derek's been seeing both of us. The room seemed to tilt sideways. You mean to tell me that you've been stealing my truck so your boyfriend can cheat on you with someone else? Sarah nodded miserably. Jessica works downtown too. Sometimes Derek would pick her up for lunch dates or other things. I didn't know about her until last week. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this new information. My wife had been having an affair, using my truck to facilitate it, and her boyfriend had been using that same truck to cheat on her with a third woman. So when you found out Derek was cheating on you, I said slowly, did it occur to you that you were doing the exact same thing to me? It's not the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. I stood up, my voice rising for the first time in this entire conversation. You made vows to me, Sarah. 22 years ago, you promised to love me, honor me, be faithful to me. And you threw that away for some guy who's been playing you the entire time. Sarah was crying harder now, her whole body shaking. I know. I made terrible choices. But Frank, please, we can fix this. I love you. No. I cut her off. You love the security I provide. The house, the steady income, the comfortable life. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been able to look me in the eye while I was sick and lie to me about where you were going. I sat back down, my anger draining away, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion. Do you have any idea what the last 2 weeks have been like for me, Sarah? Lying in bed with pneumonia, trusting you completely, grateful for every bowl of soup you brought me? And the whole time, you were planning your next visit to Derek's apartment. I took care of you. You brought me soup while stealing my truck. You checked my temperature while texting your boyfriend. You played the caring wife while living a completely double life. I shook my head in disbelief. The cruelty of it is staggering. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving streaks of mascara across her cheeks. What happens now? Now you figure out where you're going to live. Because you've got until the end of the month to move out of my house. Your house. This house was in my name before we got married, Sarah. Oregon's not a community property state, and we never added you to the deed. Check with your lawyer if you don't believe me. I pulled out another set of documents from the folder. I also closed our joint checking account this morning. The savings account too. There's $2,847 in marital assets, which I'll split with you according to state law. But the house, my retirement accounts, my business, those were all mine before we got married. Sarah stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. You're serious? You're really doing this? Dead serious? I've already changed the locks on my office. I'll be changing the locks here on November 1st. That gives you 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live. But where am I supposed to go? I honestly don't know, I said. But you've got Derek. I'm sure he'll take care of you. Unless Jessica objects. The mention of Derek's other girlfriend made Sarah flinch. Derek and I. That's complicated now. I imagine it is. Turns out being someone's side piece isn't as glamorous when you discover you're not even the only side piece. I started gathering up all the evidence, putting it back in the manila folder. Oh, and Sarah. You might want to get tested. If Derek's been with both of us through you, and with Jessica, and probably other women we don't know about, you should probably see a doctor. Her face went pale again. Frank, we always used. I don't want to hear the details. I just want you to be safe, even though you clearly weren't thinking about my safety when you were putting me at risk. Sarah sat in that chair for a long time, just crying. Finally, she looked up at me with something that might have been remorse in her eyes. I never meant for you to get hurt, Frank. But you knew I would be, I replied. You just didn't care enough to stop. That's not true, isn't it? You had dozens of opportunities to end this affair. Dozens of moments when you could have chosen our marriage over Derek Martinez. But every time, you chose him. Even when I was sick, even when I needed you most, you chose him. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our neighborhood. 22 years in this house. 22 years of thinking we were building something together. You know what the worst part is, Sarah? It's not even the affair. It's the lying. The looking me in the eye while I was sick and lying about everything. That takes a special kind of coldness. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to protect yourself. There's a difference. Behind me, I heard Sarah get up from her chair. Her footsteps moved toward the stairs. I'm going to pack some things, she said quietly. I'll stay at Janet's tonight. Good idea. Oh, and Sarah. The credit card you thought I didn't know about? I called and had it canceled this morning. Wouldn't want you running up any more debt on romantic dinners. Her footsteps stopped. You can't do that. It's my card. Actually, I can. Your credit application listed our joint income to qualify for the credit limit. That makes me legally responsible for the debt. So I canceled it. I heard her start crying again, but I didn't turn around. I just kept looking out the window at our quiet suburban street, thinking about how different my life was going to be. Sarah left that afternoon with 2 suitcases and a box of personal items. She didn't ask for my help loading her car, and I didn't offer. We had one more brief conversation at the front door. Frank, I know you probably can't believe this right now, but I really did love you. I still do. I looked at her for a long moment. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd built a life with, the woman I'd trusted more than anyone in the world. Maybe you did, in your way. But your way of loving someone apparently includes stealing from them, lying to them, and betraying them while they're sick. That's not love, Sarah. That's something else entirely. She nodded and walked to her car without looking back. That was 3 months ago. The divorce was finalized last week, just like I'd planned. Sarah moved in with her coworker Janet temporarily, then found a studio apartment downtown when Janet got tired of the drama. Derek, it turned out, didn't handle the scandal as well as Sarah had hoped. You see, Derek worked in insurance, just like Sarah. And the insurance industry in Portland is smaller than you might think. Word travels fast when someone gets arrested for vehicle theft, especially when it involves an affair with a coworker's wife. Derek's boss wasn't thrilled about the negative attention, and Derek found himself looking for a new job within a month. But the real blow came when Derek's ex-wife got wind of the situation. Remember, Derek had been divorced for 2 years, but apparently there were still some financial entanglements. Child support, alimony, jointly owned property. When his ex found out he'd been living a lifestyle that included multiple girlfriends and expensive dinners while claiming he couldn't afford higher support payments, she took him back to court. Last I heard, Derek was working at a car dealership in Beaverton and living in a 1-bedroom apartment near the airport. His red Camaro got repossessed when he couldn't make the payments anymore. Funny how life works out sometimes. As for Jessica, the other woman whose earring started this whole mess, she disappeared from the picture pretty quickly once the police got involved. Turns out she was married too, and her husband didn't take kindly to learning about her affair through a criminal investigation. She transferred to her company's Seattle office to get a fresh start. Sarah tried to reach out to me a few times over the past 3 months. Phone calls that went straight to voicemail, emails I deleted without reading, a Christmas card I threw away unopened. She even showed up at my office once, but my secretary told her I was unavailable. The truth is, I have nothing to say to her. We said everything that needed to be said that day in our living room when I laid out all the evidence of her betrayal. I've been rebuilding my life, piece by piece. It's strange, you know, discovering who you are when you're not half of a couple anymore. I'd been married for so long that I'd forgotten what it was like to make decisions just for myself. I traded in that Silverado for a new Ford F-150, fully loaded with every option I wanted. Got a premium sound system, leather seats, the works. Sarah always said my trucks were too expensive, too impractical. Turns out when you're not funding someone else's double life, you can afford the things you actually want. I've been traveling more too. Took a trip to Ireland last month, something I'd always wanted to do but Sarah had never been interested in. Spent 2 weeks driving around the countryside, staying in bed and breakfasts, meeting interesting people. It was the first real vacation I'd taken in years. The house feels different now. Quieter, but not lonely. Peaceful. I rearranged all the furniture, got rid of things that reminded me of Sarah, bought new artwork that I actually like. It's my space now, Completely and totally mine. I've been dating a little bit. Nothing serious yet, but it's nice to spend time with women who actually want to be with me instead of just using me for what I can provide. Women who don't have secret credit cards or mysterious errands that require borrowing my truck. The funniest thing happened last month. I was at Home Depot buying supplies for a project, and I ran into Tom Patterson from the auto shop. We got to talking, and he mentioned something that made me laugh out loud. "You know, Frank, I never did get to work on your truck. Your wife called and canceled that brake job the same day she brought it in. Said you'd decided to take it somewhere else." Even at the end, even when she was caught red-handed, Sarah had been lying. There never was any brake work scheduled. She just needed a story to explain why my truck was missing. Tom looked confused by my reaction to his news, but I just thanked him and went on with my day. Some secrets aren't worth explaining, even when they don't matter anymore. I sleep better now than I have in years. My house is quiet and peaceful. My truck stays exactly where I park it, and I always know who's been driving it. When I'm sick, I don't have to worry about someone using my illness as an opportunity to betray me. But you know what? The best revenge wasn't the arrest or the divorce or watching Sarah's life fall apart. The best revenge was simply removing myself from her toxic orbit and building something better. Sarah thought she was so smart, juggling her husband and her boyfriend, using my resources to fund her double life. She thought she could have it all, the security of marriage and the excitement of an affair. But she forgot the most important rule of any deception: don't get greedy. If she just asked for a divorce, she could have walked away with alimony and half our savings. Instead, she tried to have everything: marriage, affair, financial security, emotional excitement, and ended up with nothing. Well, not exactly nothing. She ended up with Derek, at least temporarily. But a man who's willing to help you cheat on your husband isn't exactly the foundation for a lasting relationship, is it? Especially when that same man is cheating on you with other women. Last I heard through mutual acquaintances, Sarah and Derek broke up about 6 weeks after my divorce was finalized. Something about trust issues, which is pretty ironic when you think about it. Two people who built their relationship on lying and cheating discovered they couldn't trust each other. Who could have seen that coming? Sarah's working at a small marketing firm now, making about half what she made at her old job. Turns out getting arrested for theft, even if the charges were dropped, isn't great for your professional reputation. She's living in that studio apartment, driving a used Honda with 150,000 miles on it, shopping at discount grocery stores. Meanwhile, I'm thriving. My accounting practice has grown by 40% this year, partly because I'm putting all my energy into work instead of trying to manage a failing marriage. I hired a new associate, expanded into tax law, even opened a second office across town. The irony isn't lost on me. Sarah left our marriage thinking she was trading up: older, stable husband for younger, exciting boyfriend. Security for passion. But she ended up trading down in every possible way. Smaller apartment, lower paying job, less financial security, and a boyfriend who was cheating on her the entire time. I, on the other hand, traded a lying, cheating wife for peace of mind, financial freedom, and the possibility of finding someone who actually wants to be with me. Sometimes people ask me if I miss being married. If I get lonely in that big house all by myself. The answer is no, not really. You can't miss something you never really had. 4 months, maybe years before I caught her, Sarah had already checked out of our marriage emotionally. I was living with someone who was physically present, but mentally and emotionally somewhere else. Now I'm living with someone who's completely present, me. And that's infinitely better than living with someone who's pretending to be present while secretly planning their escape. The house is mine now, completely and legally. The truck is mine. The business is mine. My time is mine. My future is mine. And nobody is going to take any of that away from me ever again. You know what I learned from all this? Betrayal reveals who people really are underneath all the pretending. Sarah wasn't just having an affair. She was the kind of person who would steal from her sick husband to facilitate that affair. The kind of person who would lie while bringing soup and checking temperatures. The kind of person who would use someone else's illness as cover for their own selfish desires. That's not someone you forgive and forget. That's someone you remove from your life completely and permanently. I don't hate Sarah anymore. Hate requires too much emotional energy, and I'd rather spend that energy on positive things. But I don't forgive her either, and I never will. Some things are unforgivable, and stealing from your sick spouse to fund an affair is definitely one of them. The criminal charges for vehicle theft were eventually dropped, just like I expected. The prosecutor said it was too difficult to prove theft between married spouses, even though we were separated when she took the truck that final time. But it didn't matter. The arrest record was enough to cost Sarah her job and her reputation. And more importantly, it sent a clear message: actions have consequences. Every choice Sarah made during those months of deception led inevitably to that phone call from jail. Every lie, every secret credit card charge, every trip to Derek's apartment in my truck was a step toward that moment when her carefully constructed double life came crashing down. She thought she was being clever, covering her tracks, managing multiple relationships like some kind of expert juggler. But deception is exhausting, and liars eventually get sloppy. They forget which story they told to which person. They leave evidence behind. They get greedy and take risks. Sarah's greed was using my truck. She could have taken taxis, or ridden with Derek, or asked Derek to pick her up. But she wanted the convenience and comfort of a reliable vehicle, so she stole mine. That greed, that sense of entitlement to my possessions, was what ultimately destroyed her. And you know what? I'm glad it happened. Not because I wanted to hurt Sarah, but because I deserved to know the truth about my own life. I deserved to make informed decisions about my future instead of living in ignorance while my wife made a fool of me. The truth set me free, even though it was painful. The truth gave me back control over my own life. The truth allowed me to stop wasting time and energy on someone who didn't value me. Now, when I wake up in the morning, I know exactly who I'm sharing my life with, me. When I make plans for the weekend, I don't have to wonder if my spouse is lying about where they're going. When I buy something nice for myself, I don't have to worry about funding someone else's secret life. That's worth more than any marriage built on lies and deception. People talk about forgiveness like it's something you owe to people who hurt you. Like moving on means pretending it never happened, giving people second chances they haven't earned. But sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is let someone live with the natural consequences of their own choices while you build a better life without them. Sarah made her bed, literally and figuratively. She chose Derek over me, deception over honesty, short-term excitement over long-term commitment. Now she gets to lie in that bed, alone, in her studio apartment, working her reduced salary job, driving her old Honda with the check engine light that's been on for 6 months. I didn't create those consequences for her. She created them for herself through her own choices. I just refused to shield her from them. I refused to enable her betrayal by pretending it didn't happen or minimizing its impact. Sometimes the best revenge isn't some elaborate plan to destroy someone's life. Sometimes it's just stepping out of the way and letting them destroy their own life while you focus on building something better. Sarah thought she could have it all: loyal husband and exciting boyfriend, financial security and emotional thrills, respectability and adventure. But life doesn't work that way. Every choice has a cost, and eventually, those costs come due. Her choices cost her everything: marriage, home, financial security, professional reputation, and ultimately even the boyfriend she'd sacrificed everything for. My choice, to tell the truth and demand accountability, cost me a marriage that was already over anyway, but it gave me back my freedom, my self-respect, and my future. I'd say I got the better end of that deal. The funny thing is, if Sarah had just been honest with me from the beginning, things could have been different. If she'd come to me and said she was unhappy, that she'd met someone else, that she wanted a divorce, we could have handled it like adults. It would have been painful, sure, but it would have been honest. We could have divided our assets fairly, gone our separate ways with dignity, maybe even remained friends eventually. But she didn't choose honesty. She chose deception. She chose to steal from me, lie to me, and use my own resources against me. Those choices transformed what could have been an amicable divorce into a devastating betrayal that required legal action. That was her choice, not mine. I just responded to the situation she created. And now, 3 months later, I can honestly say that I'm grateful for everything that happened. Grateful for that earring I found in my truck. Grateful for the GPS tracking that revealed the truth. Grateful for the strength I found to take action instead of just accepting the lies. I'm grateful that Sarah's betrayal happened while I was still young enough and healthy enough to start over. At 58, I've got a lot of good years left, and I plan to spend them with people who value honesty, loyalty, and mutual respect. I'm grateful that I discovered who Sarah really was before wasting any more years of my life on someone who saw me as a convenient source of security rather than a partner worth cherishing. Most of all, I'm grateful that I had the courage to demand better for myself. That I didn't just accept being treated poorly because it was easier than confronting the truth. Sarah gambled our entire marriage on the bet that I'd never find out about her affair. She lost that bet spectacularly, and now she's living with the consequences. Me? I'm living with the rewards of refusing to accept less than I deserve. And that, my friends, is how you turn betrayal into the best thing that ever happened to you.